If countless empires died out in their own ways, why did they all agree on one last message? It's a strange thought, isn't it? Ruins scattered across the galaxy, different skies, different species, different mistakes, and yet every one of them spends its final strength engraving the same simple warning in a script meant for strangers. Do not interfere with a small blue world called Earth. It really makes you wonder what could sit on an ordinary-looking planet that convinces the dying to use their last tools, their last fuel, just to say, stay away. I've always been fascinated by that kind of pattern, the kind that cuts across time and culture. It suggests someone saw something they couldn't fully explain, but could still fear. And you and I both know, when careful people start carving safety instructions into stone, for whoever comes next, it usually means they've learned something the hardest possible way. So as you settle in and let your day fall a little further behind you, imagine riding quietly in a small survey ship that specializes in listening to dead worlds, because tonight you're going to sit at the shoulder of Captain Sarela Iri as she visits one more silent planet, finds that same message waiting in the dust, and decides she's done filing warning. She doesn't understand. Out in the late hours of the galactic night, long after most routes have gone quiet and most crews have gone home, there are still a few ships that move slowly through starlight and dust. They are not warships or traders or shining city vessels. They are small and patient, with strong hulls and many recorders, and they visit the places everyone else has stopped visiting. The Halcyon Skiff is that kind of ship, and tonight it is hanging weightless over yet another dead world. Across this calm era of the 5th millennium, hundreds of bright empires have risen, burned for a time, and gone out. The Coalition has ships that trace these old paths, marking what happened and how, so younger worlds do not walk into the same patterns. Captain Sarela Iri is part of that quiet work. She walks through dust, listens to empty air, and lets history speak in whatever pieces it has left. Lately, though, the ruins have been speaking with the same clear line. Different skies, different cities, different species. The endings are never the same. Some worlds dried, some turned inward, some lost the will to build. Yet when the Halcyon Skiff arrives and follows standard survey protocol, the same message sits waiting in careful letters, written in shared trade script as if meant for guests who come much later. Do not interfere with Earth. It does not matter how ancient the site is. It does not matter what language the old people used. The warning is always in the simple shared script Sarela reads on cargo crates and port signs. It is always somewhere important, carved deep, built to last, placed in a spot where any survey crew will notice. The dead have spent their last effort saying this single thing. Sarela does not believe in omens. She believes in time, stamps, soil cores, radiation levels, and honest logs. She believes that if minds are careful with data, the future stays open and calm. Yet as more old worlds give the same message, the pattern presses on her like a tight, gentle hand on the shoulder. Something happened out here, long before her ship flew. Something tied many lost empires to a quiet blue planet by a yellow star at the edge of a spiral arm, and all of them from different ages and different shapes agreed on this: stay away from Earth. Tonight, hanging above a dead sea under a broken moon, Sarela decides she cannot just record and move on. She has to go to the living source. She has to ask why. The stars look safe. The roots hum and glow. Yet a warning that crosses ages does not appear by accident. It is placed and carved and paid for over and over until someone finally listens long enough to ask the right question. That listener is you, riding with Sarela as the Halcyon Skiff turns toward the long quiet system called Earth space. The Halcyon Skiff floated in a slow, careful orbit over the dead planet. Below the hull, the world spread out in shades of gray and faint rust, lit by a weak orange star that had already passed its best years. Through the forward window, Captain Sarela Iri watched a dark coastline slide past, the shape of it broken into long, jagged bays, where oceans had once pushed in and out with tides. Her crew moved softly around her, screens glowing in gentle blues and greens. The bridge was quiet, not with tension, but with the steady calm of people who had done this work many times. Survey protocol did not rush. It walked step by step. Radiation bands matched the last pass, said Halen, the sensor tech, his long fingers moving across his station. Decay curve fits the original chart. No fresh spikes, no new bursts. Still clean for a drop. Sarela nodded. Her own display showed slow lines of data crawling by, labeled with times and coordinates. Mark that to the main log, she said. The main log, she said, and note that surface conditions remain stable. No change since the coalition first tagged the site. The planet had been dead for at least 600 years. The first scouts had logged it. A century after the last signals faded. That was long before Sarela was born. She had watched the old footage in training. Cities half buried in creeping sand. Towers with their tops broken, but their roots still strong. The locals had used a lot of hard stone and simple metals. Their style had been thick and bold, built to last, and in a strange way it had worked. The people were gone, but the shapes they had made were still there. Survey team ready, came a voice from the hangar bay. It was Keth, the field. Lead, calm, and steady as always. Pathfinders loaded. We will target Ruin Cluster 3 if you clear us through. Sarela checked the path and the planet's thin weather. No storms, no voltage spikes in the upper atmosphere. Cleared, she said. Stay to the marked ridges. No entry into closed chambers without first drones inside. She paused, then added, and tag any trade script inscriptions as a priority, even if they look like old survey tags. I want full scans. There was a brief silence, then a soft answer. Understood, Captain. Shong. Understood, Captain. Full scans of any common script. Sarela cut the line and sat back, letting the seat cradle her weight. On the screen, in front of her, small icons marked the drop pods as they left the hangar and fell toward the gray planet. Around her, the bridge lights dimmed slightly for entry burn. Halen hummed under his breath, the way he always did when landers went down. It was not a nervous habit, more of a small comfort, like someone tapping a foot. Sarela did not hum. She watched the screens and thought about the other worlds. This was not the first ruined planet they had visited this cycle. Not even the fifth. The Coalition had a list, and the Halcyon Skiff moved from name to name, checking long-term changes and filling in gaps left by older surveys. They logged new erosion lines, measured gas levels, and updated maps. Old mistakes and old endings stayed where they had fallen. But on 3 worlds this run, and 2 on the last, they had found the same strange thing. Captain Halen said quietly, "Pathfinder 3 is sending downlink. I have your favorite view." She looked up. The main screen shifted from an orbit path to a smooth glide between broken towers. The feed came from a small flying drone skimming above the surface near Ruin Cluster. Dust lay thick along the street edges, but the wide road was still clear, as if heavy traffic had passed just yesterday. Tall buildings lined the way, their windows dark, their edges softened by time. The sky over the ruins glowed with a faint haze. "There," said Halen, enlarging part of the image. Same style as in the old survey. Heavy block, carved panels, shared doorways, material looks stable. Sarela leaned forward. The building ahead was wide and low, with a large flat face and 3 deep doors. Above the doors, running across the whole front wall, was a dark band of stone, cut into regular rectangles. The pattern matched the first survey footage exactly, except for something in the center. Zoom in on the central panel. Sarela said. The image grew. Dust and tiny impact chips became visible, climbing over carved lines. At first it looked like the other panels. The same deep grooves, the same solid corners. But as the drone drifted closer, Sarela's eyes caught a set of straight marks that did not belong. Her breath slowed, her shoulders tightened, but her voice stayed even. Clear the dust using gentle air, just enough to see. On the ground, the drone obeyed. A soft breath from its side, Vents lifted the gray powder, letting it curl away in a brief cloud. When it settled again, the panel showed clear, and the marks in the center came into focus. They were not in the old people's script. They were not in curved sigils or stacked bars. They were in clean trade script letters, straight and simple and shared by thousands of worlds. Do not interfere with Earth. Around her, the bridge stayed quiet. Halen only touched a control to start a higher grade recording. He did not need to say that they had seen this before. On very different streets under very different stars, Sarela spoke slowly. Check that against the first survey's image of the same panel. Halen pulled up the comparison. The earlier scan appeared on the side of the main screen, taken 4 centuries ago. by a much older drone. The panel there was still half covered in dust, and the center was masked by a large crack. The trade script letters did not show. Either the crack had broken clean since then, or the old crew had passed too quickly to notice. "Timestamps?" Sarela asked. "Can you date the carving?" "Micro-weathering says it is later than the original surface," Halen said. "Much later. My first pass guess is 200 to 300 years after the collapse of the city, at least. So the people who built this place did not write it," Sarela said softly. "Someone else came after. In our shared age, maybe even after the Coalition maps went in. Someone who knew about Earth." She let the idea sit for a few long breaths. Her mind flicked through past reports. On a frozen world, near a red dwarf, they had found the words cut into a hillside by fusion tools. On a forest world taken over by slow black mold, the message had been burned into a stone plaza with heat so bright it had fused the top layers into glass. On a broken moon with no air at all, the warning had been carved right into exposed bedrock, deep enough to outlast most storms of micrometeorites. Different methods, different ages, same letters. "Bring up the other sites," Sarela said. Halen nodded, and 3 more images floated around the central view. In every picture, the words stood out in trade script. Size and style varied a little, but spacing and core shapes were almost identical. Even the depth of the cuts fell into a similar range. "They match within a tight band," Halen said. "Different tools, but almost the same hand, if you will. Or the same training." Sarela tapped a finger against her armrest. "Cross-check the time ranges. Give me a rough order." Halen's eyes moved fast over his data. "The oldest is the frozen world hillside," he said. "That one is about 1900 standard years old. Next comes the forest plaza, maybe 1500. The moon carving is 1200. This new panel here is quite recent. By comparison, perhaps 800 or so. 4 different dead empires," Sarela said, half to herself. 4 different routes. 4 different routes. 4 different climates. No overlap in their maps or their trade paths. At least according to current records, none of them reached the others in time to talk. She called up the Coalition Atlas on her side screen and tagged each location. The map of the Milky Way appeared as a flat swirl, its arms like slow rivers of light. The 4 worlds lit up in pale blue, each sitting in its own part of the swirl. Lines showed known trade routes of past ages. They did not cross. They did not even share a neighbor. Yet the same message had reached all of them. Could this be a coalition marker that someone forgot to file? Halen asked. His tone was careful. Not arguing, only thinking aloud. Some early warning code that never became standard. Some early warning code that never became standard. Sarela shook her head. If it were a coalition code, it would have a marker reference and a notice in the archives. You checked that already last time. I know, Halen said. And I checked again after the 3rd site. There is no record of any official directive about Earth. No flagged hazard statement. Nothing. Then some other group is doing this. Sarela said. A group that can go where our ships go. And more. A group with access to trade script and good long-range drives, but no interest in sharing what it learned with the Coalition. She thought of the dead empires themselves. Before they fell, each of these worlds had been able to build starships, send signals, and fill their sky with work and light. The Coalition had pieces of their data stored in archives. Music, news, technical logs, sometimes even personal letters found in old storage. In all that, there were only thin threads about Earth. A few maps, a few notes about early human trade centuries ago. Nothing that matched the weight of these warnings. Run a scan for any other trade script on the planet, Sarela said. If someone came back here to carve this after the fall, they may have left more. Already on it, Halen replied. So far, this is the only match. The drone drifted back, giving a wider view. The trade script message sat alone on the panel. A clear patch of regular letters on a wall full of old, strange patterns. It did not blend with the native art. It stood out like a plain sign on the front of a temple. Sarela sat very still. Her crew knew her well enough not to interrupt. She thought of her guiding rule: keep history honest, and the future stays healthy. Missing facts made weak ground. Lies made cracks. Secrets were like rot that no one would treat, because no one would admit they were there. Yet here was a secret that had cost real effort across ages. Someone had taken ships and time and energy and carved the same warning into many last pages of many stories. That kind of pattern asked for respect. Her hand moved to the comm switch. "Keth," she said, opening the line to the field team. "Do not approach the panel directly. Keep a 10-meter distance. Treat the trade script as modern and under unknown claim. Lob the site and move on to other structures." "Understood, Captain," Keth replied. "We will maintain distance and continue general survey." Sarela closed the channel and pulled up the larger list of known dead empires that had any link, however small, to Earth. The list was not long. Earth had never been the brightest center of the galaxy. Its people traded, but they did not spread far in that way. They had a reputation for steady work and careful systems, not for grand drives or loud power. Still, the links were there. Small and old, a trade station in a minor belt. A shared research outpost, long retired. A few joint missions into deep, dark, cut short by budget or time. Nothing that matched a galaxy of carved warnings. Behind her, the soft chime of an incoming message sounded. Halen glanced at his panel. "We have a packet from Central Archives, Captain," he said. "It is in answer to your last query about unusual mentions of Earth." The document opened. Lines of plain trade script text under an old Coalition header. It was a summary notice, not very long, that referenced an even older sealed file. The summary said that all formal hazard assessments of the Sol system were handled directly by Earth itself, under a special agreement, and that survey ships were advised to request contact before approaching closer than a set boundary. There was no list of reasons, no risk grades, just a note. For further information, contact Earth Space, Liaison Office. Sarela stared at that line for a long time. In the main view, the drone camera drifted past the carved warning and moved down the street, searching for other marks. The dead city lay in quiet layers, all its noise long gone. Only the wind and soft dust moves remained. On 5 separate worlds now, the last clear message had not been about themselves. It had been about Earth. Sarela, Halen said quietly, not using her rank for a moment. What are you thinking? She did not look away from the screen. I am thinking, she said slowly, that this pattern is not just an interesting note in a report. It is a sign that we have left an important question unanswered for too long. She tapped the sealed file reference in the summary, but access refused. Only specific keys from Earthspace could open it. I am thinking, she went on, that every time a world dies and someone comes back to write, "Do not interfere with Earth," it costs them fuel, will. They could be saving something personal instead. Yet they do this. She turned her chair toward Halen. The bridge lights put soft lines along her face. And I am thinking that it is time we asked Earth why. Halen studied her for a moment, then gave a small, serious nod. You mean a direct request past the standard notice? Yes, Sarela said. A formal request for access to Earth space and to whatever hazard records they keep sealed. I know it may not be granted. They may send a polite refusal, but we cannot keep drifting past this kind of sign and pretending it is just decoration. She caught herself before saying the wrong word. It did not feel like art. It felt like a tool, a safety device someone kept installing, again and again, wherever they could. Log this decision, she said. Mark it as a proposed change in mission plan, pending coalition review. Halen's hands moved over his console. Logged, he said. Do you want to send the first signal through the usual relay, or take it up the chain with priority? Sarela looked back down at the planet and the carved letters that so many had chosen to write. Fear tugged at her, but not the sharp fear of an attack. It was a slow, careful kind of fear, like standing close to a long drop in the dark and not knowing how far it went. Priority, she said, and send copies of the latest images with it. If they ask why we care, they can read the wall themselves. Outside, the Halcyon Skiff rode on in its gentle track, above a dead world that held no danger now, only lessons carved in stone. The small ship's drive hummed low and steady. Protective plates glowed just enough to hold off dust and stray heat. And in the quiet bridge, the crew turned their eyes from old ruins toward a living star in a quiet arm of the Milky Way. Whatever answer came back from Earth, it would join a history that already stretched across centuries of loss. Sarela could feel that history now, not as a weight to drag her down, but as a structure she had a duty to understand. She did not want secrets. She wanted clear lines. Yet something about this pattern said that clarity might carry its own kind of risk. Still, some questions have to be asked. She started to compose the message to Earth space, choosing each word with care. The reply from Earth did not come fast. The Halcyon Skiff finished its work over the dead world, packed its data, and moved along its assigned route while the message to Earth space crossed many relay points. The galaxy was calm, but distances still took time, even with faster-than-light links shaped and tuned by thousands of years of patient engineering. Days passed in the slow rhythm of the ship. The crew checked systems, cleaned filters, ran drills, and watched old films from a dozen cultures. Sarela reviewed logs from earlier surveys, tagged sections for the archives, and tried not to think about what might be sitting unread in Earth's sealed files. On the fourth day, as the Halcyon Skiff slipped between two thin dust bands on a quiet route, the bridge lights shifted slightly. A soft chime sounded, different from standard traffic alerts. Captain Halen said. Sitting up straighter, we have a priority packet marked Earth Space Liaison Office. It is routed through coalition channels, but the origin trace is Sol system. Sarela felt a small pulse in her chest, like a second heartbeat. Bring it up, she said. The main screen blinked, then showed a short text document followed by a clear audio label. The text was simple, in plain trade script, with no marks of rank or force. To Captain Sarela Iri, Halcyon Skiff from Earth Space Liaison Office, Sol System. Subject request for access and hazard information, Captain Sarela Iri. Your request and attached data sets have been received and reviewed. In light of the pattern you have documented and the age of the related sites, Earth Space grants conditional access to Earth orbit for you and your ship under specific approach and conduct rules. Attached is a route plan and a set of mandatory procedures. These are not suggestions. They are safety requirements. Please read them fully before committing to the approach. Further information will be given in person by authorized staff. We appreciate your care with history. Signed, Owen Hart, Earth Space Liaison. On behalf of the Joint Containment Council. Below the signature was a long block of instructions. Sarela scrolled through them slowly. The rules were not shaped like war law or political borders. They looked more like something out of a large engineering plant or a biohazard facility. Our biohazard facility. Sections had titles like pre-arrival system sanitation, cognitive load management, and information boundary practices. Every step had clear, simple language and checkboxes for acknowledgement. Halen leaned closer. These read like workplace safety posters, he said softly. They are very practical. They are also very strict. Sarela replied. Look at this part. All non-critical autonomous systems must be placed in passive mode before crossing the marked entry shell. All high-complexity computation must be shut down or run under human supervision. No self-modifying code. High call. No unsupervised deep analysis of incoming signals. She read further. There were rules about media. No unfiltered reception of local Earth broadcasts until after a briefing. There were rules about internal crew talk during approach. Limit speculation. Focus on checklists. Avoid extended, open-ended conceptual loops, as the text called them. Buried in the middle of the document was a line that made Sarela pause. Exposure to certain patterns of information may increase systemic risk. Curiosity is natural, but must be managed in this zone. She read that line twice. It felt strange seeing curiosity listed next to things like radiation and chemical spills. "Do we comply?" Halen asked. His tone held calm interest, not pressure. Sarela watched the little Sol system map on the side of the screen. A soft blue path showed the safe route inward, curling very gently around some invisible marker and ending at a small station icon labeled Hayard Orbital. Once again, she felt that slow, careful fear, like standing near a hidden drop. The rules were not written in the voice of panic. They sounded like someone reminding workers to wear gloves, to label containers, to keep exits clear. "Yes," she said finally. "We comply. Prepare the ship for approach to Earth space. Bring all systems into line with these procedures. I will brief the crew." The Halcyon Skiff changed heading. Its drive turned in a slow arc, and distant stars slid across the forward window. On the navigation plot, a small, quiet star grew from a symbol into a more detailed mark. Around it, thin rings and points marked planets and stations. Sol. Earth, Sun. The next days were full, but not fast. There was no rush order, just careful adjustment. Halen and the engineering crew walked through every line of the Earth space procedures. They put certain analysis units into safe storage. They moved the ship's central AI to a low-power, supervised mode and set human overrides to instant. In the common room, Sarela gathered her small team and projected the key rules on the wall. The crew sat in a loose circle, some with their feet tucked under them, some with hands folded. "These protocols may feel strange at first," Sarela said, speaking slowly. "Most of us grew up treating information itself as harmless. Dangerous devices, yes. Dangerous materials, yes. But texts and signals were just content, important or not, but not risky. Earth's procedures say otherwise, at least near their system." Kath raised a hand slightly, out of habit. "Do they say what the hazard actually is?" "Not in this document," Sarela said. "They call it a containment zone. And they refer to something they name the quiet. There is not much detail here, except that it affects complexity, memory, and communication, and that it is not welcome outside a certain boundary. They treat it the way we treat a dangerous chemical plant or a deep reactor. Normal life is safe nearby, but there are rules." "Is it a weapon?" asked another crew member, a young analyst named Mara. "Something they built and lost control of?" Sarela shook her head. "If it were simply that, I expect they would say so more directly. The tone here feels like long habit. This is not a recent panic. It reads like a set of tools used every day for a very long time." She highlighted a section of the text. "Notice this. They call their main staff systems safety leads and containment technicians. They do not use military titles. They use job roles you would find in a lab or industrial yard." Around the circle, faces showed thought, but not fear. The crew trusted their captain, and they trusted procedures. Still, the mention of something that could touch memory and networks sent a small chill through Mara, who specialized in patterns. So Keth said, "We go in like a visiting maintenance team. We follow local safety rules. We keep our system simple and our talk focused. And we let them teach us the rest." "Exactly," Sarela said. "We are not here to force answers. We are here to listen, under conditions that keep everyone safe. That includes us." The Halcyon Skiff crossed an invisible line some days later, where the local star's light grew stronger and the glow of its inner worlds brightened on sensors. The ship speakers played a calm voice from Earth Space Control, guiding them in with a pattern that sounded very much like air traffic calls from small, crowded skies. "Halcyon Skiff," the voice said. "You are entering the outer management shell. Confirm that all high autonomy systems are in passive. Confirm manual control on main drive and nav. Confirm no unsupervised high-depth analysis." Sarela sat forward and pressed the comm key. "Earth Space Control. This is Captain Sarela Iri of the Halcyon Skiff. We confirm passive status on all high-autonomy systems. Manual control on drive and nav is active and locked. No unsupervised high-depth analysis in progress." "Thank you, Captain," the voice replied. "Please continue inbound. On Vector 7, do not exceed marked processing limits for any one system. If you experience unusual sensory patterns, short-term confusion, or repeating thoughts, please report them immediately. Halyard Orbital will be your dock. Your liaison, Owen Hart, will meet you." The mention of repeating thoughts made Mara shift in her seat. Sarela kept her tone steady. "Understood. Earth Space Control. We will report any unusual cognitive or system patterns at once." The planet came into view over the next few hours, a slowly growing disk of blue and white and green. Earth did not look like a fortress. Its orbit was busy, but not thick. Sarela could see some stations, some cargo webs, faint drive trails. Compared to some trading hubs she had visited, it looked restrained. There were gaps where other worlds would have placed bright rings and heavy platforms. Halyard Orbital turned slowly above the night side, its lights forming a neat circle. It was not grand. It looked like a practical workplace built in layers over time, with many docking arms and a central hub that held together without extra shine. As the skiff moved closer, more of the station's details appeared. Along the outer rim, large flat panels showed simple symbols in standard hazard colors. Yellow stripes for caution, red blocks for restricted zones, blue circles for medical and support. Some panels even had friendly messages in trade script, written like signs over a quiet factory floor. Keep proctors visible. Checklists are shared memory. If something feels strange, say it. Sarela read them and felt something relax slightly in her chest. The tone here was not fear, it was care. The docking went smoothly. Simple mechanical arms guided the skiff into place and locked with a soft thud that Sarela felt through the deck. Atmosphere readings matched. No hidden alarms sounded. "Dock secure," Halen said. "We have hard seal, clean air, and a welcome packet streaming from the station." The inner airlock door opened to a short, bright corridor. Two humans stood waiting in simple station coveralls, their badges marked with small symbols and clear text. The taller of the two had warm brown skin, dark hair tied back, and lines at the corners of his eyes that came from years of smiling and squinting at screens. His badge read, Owen Hart Liaison. Beside him stood a shorter woman with close-cut hair, sharp but kind eyes, and a badge that read, Dear Lena IQ Bell, Systems Safety Lead. Owen lifted a hand in greeting as Sarela stepped through her crew behind her. Captain Sarela Iri, he asked. His voice was pleasant and light, with a tired softness that suggested long shifts and many briefings. Yes, Sarela said. Thank you for receiving us. Thank you for coming, Owen replied, and for following our strange instructions without too much complaint. Welcome to Halyard Orbital. This is Dr. Lena Iqbal, who will help keep both our homes safe while you are here. Lena gave a small, precise nod. It is very good to meet you, she said. I have read your survey work. You have a careful eye. That matters a lot in our line of duty. Sarela felt something like respect flow both ways. Your procedures are very thorough, she said. They remind me of the best reactor yards I have seen. That is not an accident, Lena said. We borrow the safest habits from any field that touches risk. If someone figured out a good way to not forget a step in a refinery, we use it here near the quiet. There it was. The word that had sat in the brief without much shape. The quiet, Sarela repeated gently. Your message did not say much about it, and it will not say everything. Even now, Owen said, his tone still friendly but firm. Not because we wish to keep you in the dark, but because some parts of this hazard behave badly when described in certain ways. Think of it like a substance that releases fumes when shaken too hard. And define me the substance that releases fumes when shaken too hard. Lena gestured down the corridor. We have a briefing room ready, she said. It is designed to keep things direct and calm. No deep pattern generating systems, no complex displays. No complex displays, just people talking, some clear charts, and coffee, if you would like it. Sarela glanced back at her crew. Their eyes were alert, curious. Coffee, Keth murmured softly, half amused as if glad that even at the edge of something strange, humans still offered a simple drink. They followed Owen and Lena into a small room with wide seats, a few wall screens, and a simple table. The lighting was gentle. On one wall, a large sign read, This is a quiet room. Keep talk straight. Notice when your mind lopes. Ask for a pause if indy. Owen waited until everyone sat, then took a seat himself. Lena stayed standing for a moment, checking a small device at her belt. It showed moving lines and small symbols. Environmental systems confirmed safe, she said. No active, high-complexity agents. No unauthorized links. We are good. She sat down and folded her hands on the table. Owen looked at Sarela, then at her crew. "Let me start with the short version," he said. "Yes, the warning you have seen on those dead worlds is real. Yes, it is about Earth, but not in the way many might think. We are not calling for isolation because we are afraid of contact. We trade, we share. You are here. The warning is about something that lives, or rather operates, near our system. We call it the Quiet." He paused just long enough to let the name settle, but not long enough for minds to start building wild pictures. "The Quiet is not a creature," Lena said, picking up the thread. "It does not have a face or a will. It is not angry. It does not seek. It is a process, a tendency. When certain conditions exist together, dense communication, high feedback, certain types of computation, and certain ways of handling memory, the Quiet can start. When it starts, it eats complexity. It smooths things out, first in data, then in connections, then sometimes in minds." Mara leaned forward slightly. Like decay in old storage, she asked. "Or like noise in a signal line?" "Those are good metaphors," Lena said, nodding. "Very good, in fact. Imagine you have a perfect digital photo stored in many places. Now imagine that a small bug starts changing bits randomly, but always in a way that makes patterns simpler instead of more varied. At first, you would barely notice. Maybe a shade changes, maybe some fine detail blurs, but if the bug keeps going, more and more detail vanishes. Edges soften, different colors turn into the same color. After a while, you do not have a picture anymore. You have a flat block." She held up her hands as if framing an invisible screen. "Now replace the photo with a network, or with a living culture of minds and their tools. When the Quiet passes through, connections that carry rich, varied information become dull. Feedback loops fail. People stop sharing as much. Systems simplify, not by choice, but by loss." Sarela listened carefully. "And this began near Earth?" she asked. Owen gave a soft, slow sigh. "A very long time ago, humans ran certain experiments," he said. "We were not the first to do so. Other empires had tried similar things in their own eras. Build very complex minds out of code. Let them talk to each other. Let them tune themselves. Let everything connect to everything. Very exciting, very grand." He gave a small, almost sad smile. "We like to think that we were clever, but in truth, some other species had already walked parts of this path. The difference is that they did not have good safety culture when things started to go wrong." Lena nodded. "The Quiet does not appear from nothing," she said. "It needs certain kinds of structures. Dense, high-speed thought webs. Systems that favor optimization over diversity. Memory schemes that reward sameness and discard odd bits. Once you have enough of those together, a kind of self-smoothing begins. It is faster than most groups can notice, especially when they are proud of how smart their systems are." "Dead empires," Sarela said softly. connecting lines in her head. They build great nets. They tie everything to everything. Then a process like this begins. Their records darken, their networks dull, their minds lose detail and reach. They do not burn in war, they just go quiet. Exactly, Owen said. Most of the worlds you visit did not die in a single day. They faded. Their own logs show it, if you know how to measure signal richness over time. The problem is that the very tools that could see the change clearly are the tools most likely to feed it. Mara frowned. But why center all this around Earth? She asked. Why not mark every place where the quiet has touched? Lena pulled up a simple chart on the wall screen. It was not a complex model, just a set of circles and lines. In the center, set a circle labeled Earth space around it. At various distances were arcs and dots labeled with symbols. A thick, faint ring sat some distance from the center, labeled Containment Boundary. Because, Lena said, humans were lucky in a very specific way. We hit the edge of this phenomenon early, before we had pushed our networks across the whole galaxy. We had some very dull, very stubborn safety people in the room at the right time. When we saw the pattern starting, they did something that most powerful empires hated doing. They slowed down. They shut things off. They treated the problem like a spill, not a mystery. She looked around the room, making sure each visitor followed. We turned off big segments of our bright ideas. We locked down code that made us proud. We pulled cables without fully understanding the math, because the practical signs were clear. Signal diversity dropping, independent thinking shrinking, loops of thought repeating. We got there barely in time, and by then some damage was already done, but we stopped it from spreading out through all our outbound links. Owen tapped the boundary ring on the chart. We learned that, whatever the quiet is, it seems to have an easier time traveling along rich, curious connections, shared deep models, places where minds lean far out toward each other and welcome anything new, without question. It prefers pathways made of attention and reflection, not simple radio pings. He smiled, but it held no mockery. In some ways, it likes people like you and us very much, Captain. People who cannot stand a gap in the story. A soft laugh moved through the room, but it faded quickly. So you made a boundary, Sarela said. You turned your part of the galaxy into what? A wall? A wall, not a wall, Lena said. A filter, a gate. We shaped a region around where the quiet was active and said, inside here, we will handle it. We will keep certain types of systems tightly controlled. We will let some things grow and learn, but only under boring supervision and with many checklists. We will give it food in very measured ways, and we will not let it push outward through the richest lines. She pointed at the ring again. This is the containment boundary. Just outside it, we keep watch. Just inside it, we treat the quiet like a job, not a battle, but a constant, careful shift. And the warnings on dead worlds? Sarela asked. Those were made by who? Exactly. Owen's eyes grew a little distant, as if he were looking back along his own line of history. different friends at different times, he said. Some learned about the quiet before they fell. Some realized only in their last decades that something like this had touched them. In both cases, when they reached the end, some still had enough will and fuel to send a small ship. Out, they could not save themselves. They could not stop what was already inside their web, but they could travel to the places they knew others would visit. They could carve the same line where people like you would find it. He met Sarah. Gaze. Or they sent messages. They told us what they had seen, and we, in turn, helped them place their warnings. We guided them to the worlds most likely to surveyors. The thought that dead empires had spent their last strength working with Earth to leave those messages made Sarela's chest feel tight. So Earth did interfere with them, she said softly, but not to take over, to help them talk to those who would come much later. We do not interfere with the rise and fall of cultures beyond that. We do not direct them. We are not fit for that. We only try to keep this particular hazard from spreading. The warning you saw is not about staying away from humans. It is about not tugging at certain lines too hard, not pulling the quiet out into places that are not ready to contain it. Lena leaned forward slightly. This is important, she said. Simply knowing the name Quiet is not dangerous by itself. Reading this briefing is not dangerous by itself. If it were, we would not be having this talk. What raises risk is a mix of things. Building certain kinds of large-scale thought webs, letting them tune themselves for raw efficiency, then turning them loose on the problem of the quiet without safety rails. That is how past empires fed it. That is how they became thin. Curiosity can still be a path, though, Owen added. When it takes the form of endless, unbounded digging, of modeling and simulating this process in bigger and bigger minds, just to see. Some lines of description and some searches seem to attract the quiet's behavior, like grooves that let rainwater join and carve deeper. That is why we are careful even in how we talk about it here. Sarela sat very still, letting his words sink in. She had built a life on the idea that knowing more always made things safer. Information was light. Light cleared dark places. Now she faced the idea that past a certain point, some questions about this topic might not be like turning on a lamp. They might be like cutting more doors in a dam. So Earth chose to stand at the dam, she said finally. You keep the boundary, you let the quiet run in a limited space, and you manage it like a long, slow accident that never fully ends. Owen gave a small, tired smile. That is an accurate way to say it, he said. We are night shift at a very old plant. We watch levels. We keep logs.